Welcome, listeners. In today's episode of Future Secured, Jason Murrell and I are sitting down with Ikram Akbar, founder of Hackersjack, a groundbreaking initiative teaching essential cybersecurity skills to children. As digital threats become more complex and widespread, we're already playing catch-up when it comes to preparing the next generation. Hackersjack, that Ikram launched in 2019, it brings together cybersecurity experts, educators, and child psychologists to create a safe, practical learning environment that empowers children to navigate the online world with confidence and resilience. I think that's such an important part. And we've seen some of the fact checking and some of the tools being removed from some of these social media platforms. So, personally, and I know Jason's very similar, building this skill set to make good decisions throughout someone's life and starting at an early age is key. So thank you for joining us, Ikram. Thank you, as always, for joining me, Jason Murrell. And over to you, Jason, for the first question.
That was a great intro, Tom. That was probably the best one. It only took 32 episodes and we've nailed it in one shot. That's fantastic. No, I never take piss. He said before the episode, just for people not listening, that I always give him grief about the intros, and that's not true. It's not every time. It's only been 30 times. Only been 30 times. He's nailed it twice. So, Ikram, thanks for joining us, mate. This is a subject that we really wanted to get into, and Tom and I, as he said off the top, really are passionate about and genuinely passionate about is that, the part with training tends to be happening, unfortunately, in the workplace to unlearn bad habits. Completely the wrong place to do it. But what I've always loved about your platform, and always obviously been a supporter of you, is that it actually goes and teaches kids the basics. And I like the bite-sized sort of chunks, the way it's done, the way it's delivered. You've really developed and made some tweaks to it, which is really nailed in the market now. But for the people who don't know you or haven't had the privileges I have and Tom, can you just give us a bit of a background on sort of how Hackersjack sort of began, how you got to the point where you are now, just for the people sort of listening?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I think this story goes back to 2019. My background is in mathematics, statistics, and computer sciences, and I have always been involved in a lot of research, doing various sorts of research in these fields. And in 2019, I was doing a lot of research in blockchain and its application in real estate. And I was actually offered a PhD from one of the universities here in Melbourne to start doing research in blockchain and its application in real estate. While that was there, and I wanted to retire into education, I'm a father of 3 boys, and my youngest was 7 at that time. And he came home one afternoon and he basically said that we are going to be using technology. Everything is going to be on iPads and computers from next year. And there was a parent information night at school. So I went there next Tuesday. I did a bit of research before that. And I saw there was a lot of gaps at that stage in terms of educating kids how to be safe online. When I went to their school meeting, parent information night, I realized there was a lot of other parents like me who were just horrified and wanted to do something right for their kids. Kids spend so much time on online, and there was not just enough structured programs available at that stage. So I basically decided to develop this platform to help kids understand what's out there, what kind of danger is there, and how they need to basically face it, identify it, and avoid that. It took me nearly 2 years after that to basically do all the research. I gave up the offer of PhD, and I thought this is much more closer to home in terms of helping kids, in terms of facing these challenges, identifying it, and then avoiding it, whichever way they can actually do it. But naturally, developing the platform was a fundamental part of it, what I wanted to do. It took me 2 years to basically go through the research. I had a lot of meetings with parents, with kids, with students of all ages, teachers. I brought in cybersecurity experts. I brought in child psychologists, psychiatrists. I did a postgrad from University of Adelaide on cybersecurity, just wanted to make sure I have the latest. All the research was done, and then I developed it and launched it in 2022, and never looked back after that. So that's the background. But overall, I have been involved with various businesses in the past, but this certainly has been a very self-satisfying because part of being what you want to leave behind, it would be a great legacy to have a platform where we can educate our future generations.
And what were the kind of biggest challenges you found that you had to address on the platform, from that parent-teacher night? I'll give you an interesting example too. My son, my youngest one, who's currently in year 9, when he started in year 7, same thing, iPad all the way through. But what they ended up doing at about mid last year is they actually started to remove the iPad and they got them back to handwriting. Because, while they were developing the IT skills, what they were losing was actually some of those core skills we all grew up with.
Absolutely.
So what were these kind of real core problems that you were trying to specifically address?
I think the problems itself is very wide. There are a lot of people trying to solve it in different silos. It may be cyber safety, cyber security, cyber hygiene, cyber well-being, but people are dealing with in different silos. Some were just helping in cyberbullying, some were just trying to fix the sextortion side, and some were actually, no, we have deepfake, we have AI-based image abuse where you can create something on the go and it can destroy someone's life in minutes. So these problems are there. And in terms of challenges was, when I went out to do the research, I had my pen and paper with me, and wherever I saw a father or a mother with 1 or 2 boys or with their kids, I just started talking. I went to a lot of birthday parties, swimming pool parties, all kind of parties. I went and I was taking notes. It was just, I'm trying to understand. And it seems like every parent wanted to talk. I was touching every parent's nightmare that we have these kids using devices. We are teaching them, we are using them in schools pretty much for every subject, but we are not giving them enough background knowledge how to be safe online. And there was no hesitation in terms of talking, but it was just like how we should deliver it, what kind of methodology we should use, and how much is the information we need to give them. One of the challenges was cybersecurity suffers historically from a stigma that it is it's a geeky subject and it's not very fashionable. And this was one of the challenges I had, that how do actually I take that and convert it into something engaging, interesting, where kids who are very heavily influenced by peers, they are able to learn the very basic concepts. So I actually went totally away from the standard approach of teaching. And I said, I need to develop bite-sized videos and lessons where if we need to use a certain methodology, how we need to have kinder, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to year 12, how do we actually develop the program where it can link what they learned in grade 1 to grade 2 and how it becomes a foundational for all the way to grade 12. So I used spiral methodology where whatever they learned in kinder and grade 1 became the foundation for learning in grade 2 and 3. And similarly, it goes all the way to grade 12.
And can you just give us some of the foundations? Because there is, and we'll get into where you've sort of spread or markets that have opened up at the moment, but how is it based, or how have you found, because you would have tweaked it a lot over the years, what are the core fundamentals that if we're giving parents, because we need to educate the parents as well, because it does need to start at home. Like, it's great to have a program like yours, but what are some of the key components, if you give the top 3 things that parents can do and teach to actually help their children? Because we're talking about school, but this access to device starts a lot earlier than that. They're
absolutely. I mean,
sooner than that.
We have parents giving these kids devices or their mobile phones when they are in the very 1, 2, or 3 years of their life. I think the most important thing is the number one thing is you must have a disciplined approach to it. First of all, start talking to your kids. That is number one approach. Talk to your kids. The more you talk, the easier it will be for you to understand as a parent what kind of challenges they are having. The problem is kids who are in grade 3, 4, and 5, they are like 9, 10 years old. They are understanding technology in a different way to kids who are in middle school. And kids who are in high school, their understanding of technology is very different. So the challenges of high school is very different to challenges in middle school, and challenges of primary or elementary are different. The way we develop the program is to basically give them a story-wide learning in kinder, and this is where we provide parents, school provides parents a lot of information how they need to communicate with these basic concepts. When these kids turn into middle school, the concept, the nature of discussion changes, and kids dependency on device and usage also changes. So we help them understand the concepts of digital sleep. So parent needs to also understand and talk to kids about what is why they need to have a proper sleep. A 1 hour less sleep in the night can destroy their next day, because they are not able to achieve what they want to achieve at school the next day. Similarly, once these kids move into high school, parent needs to understand that kids are going through a massive change when they are 15, 16. Their body is going through a change, their thought process is going through a change, their challenges are different. They are the whole change process is so big for them that they need a parent who is supportive and understanding. If it, and I'll give you an example. I was at a school, and a parent was talking to me that an 11-year-old child has seen a nude, and he was not able to sleep well for next 2-3 days. And then once he spoke to his parents, the dad basically said he switched off the internet access. I think this is very wrong approach. What these kids are looking for is a father or mother who are able to communicate with them, understand them, and help them understand that it's okay. It's not your fault. It happened. Let's move on, and let's first of all do not take the device away, and do not disconnect the internet, because the first thing these kids are gonna do, they're never gonna come back to you again and talk about their problem. So there are multiple things we can do, but starting the very first thing, start talking to your kids, please. That is very important. We have recently seen there have been a couple of shows on Netflix. One is adolescence, and then there is I think there's a show called Caught as well. These are very, very relevant for parents to watch. Maybe not for kids at this stage, but parents must watch it and try to understand how what kind of emotional changes these kids are going through, and what technology is doing. Technology is actually amplifying all these problems. So start talking to your kids.
I think that's a fantastic thing to put a lot of the ownership on the parents. And Jason and I were having a chat about this the other day. He was telling me with his daughters, basically he'd take the mobile phone away from them at night. So, on a school from Sunday to Thursday, the internet gets cut off at 10 p.m. for his computers, my son, and at 10:30 I take the phone away. So I said, you can still read a book, I don't mind. But essentially, that's number one part, which is not expecting him to have the self-discipline to be able to manage himself at that age. And I think the second part is so true. Like the internet, the way it is, you are going to come across some bad things. And it's about the mindset, the support, and the education that you give your child that helps them make good decisions. Information is power. Absolutely. So how are you? And the adolescence thing, I think, is fantastic. We watched that, my wife and I, when it first popped up. And it was kind of like, again, that switching off, that disconnect, that lack of paying attention. And one of the things that I personally felt with the laws they were pushing through, or they were trying to in Australia, was that it was almost taking the ownership off the parent. And saying, well, we will block it for up to a certain age, so you don't have to worry about building these skills in-house. And I actually think that's more dangerous than empowering someone as they grow up to kind of make good decisions and make mistakes, and to your point, to be comfortable to come and share with their parents when things aren't going right. So, I mean, how do you see that kind of parent responsibility in this whole journey, and how are you kind of like helping people along the journey with?
Yeah, we have recently introduced a parent dashboard in our program. And although our program is pretty much implemented through schools, and it is a grade specific program. So we have program for kinder cyber, then primary cyber, elementary cyber, middle cyber, high school cyber, and then we have a teacher training program. Now we have recently implemented parent dashboard where schools are able to send one activity per month to parents where they can do this activity with their children. Children are able to discuss, they can take this activity and do it with their grandparents or with their siblings, or they can take an activity once a month and do it with their local community. The purpose is that we want to get involved the whole community in this learning process. Technology has been thrown at us while we are growing up, and we haven't been able to change our habits, because cybersecurity is a very much behavioral issue. So from parents to grandparents to community to kids to us, if we take that approach of learning, it will become a second nature. But for kids, it's much easier to learn because they are such they are such like sponge. Their brains are like sponge. They're just grabbing everything that you're giving them. But if you can give them a structured learning, it becomes very easy for them to understand. As far as parents are concerned, what we have seen so far is kids are able to communicate better with their parents once they have learned something in class. So definitely it's working well for us, and this is where parent dashboard is going to become even more powerful for us in early ages, from kinder to 8, where parents are able to do these activities with kids.
Now, there's a few interesting points that, and the listeners might have picked it up as well, is that you're speaking very American school system when you're talking about elementary school and middle school and things of that nature. Do you want to just explain, probably this ties into the journey of where you've had to look to get traction for the product, even though you developed the product here in Australia. Hackersjack is an Australian company, but you've basically really made most of your sales or most of your success, from what I understand or what I remember, is that it's in the US. So do you want to just sort of speak to that to a bit, and then, what we can do here in Australia to try and support it a bit more, because there is no sort of cohesive program here. A lot of people are sort of attacking it from different angles, but do you want to just speak to that? And this probably talks to the startup part, which I think people will be interested in as well, is that, often, and we speak about this all the time here, is to be successful as an Australian company, you often need to go and earn your stripes offshore and then come back here. So I don't know, it's been a challenge for you, just knowing you for a while, in raising capital and having to get business and having to look offshore, and in particular in the US. So do you want to just chat to that, mate, and just give us some background around that part?
I can speak for hours on that topic.
Yeah, we don't have that long, but at least give it 3.5 minutes.
No, I understand that. I think no doubt Australia has got its own culture when it comes to startup, but United States is very different. Obviously, US is US because of its innovative culture. They have a mentality of giving you maximum support if you are a startup, and I was lucky to have that kind of support. And I got a great team in the US. We got sizable work happening there. In terms of when we compare it, there is no comparison between Australia and US in the startup world. In Australia, we have a very small community of investors. Traditionally, these investors come from a real estate background. So for them to understand technology and startup culture, it takes a while. In the US, there is 44,000 registered investors in startup. So it's just very sizable. And then they are willing to take chances. US has a culture where they want to give you an opportunity, even if if you are selling it to business or school or whoever. They want to give you an opportunity. They want to be the leader in terms of adoption. They want to experiment your technology. They want to give you the chance. They want to see if they can use it to better their own systems. So all that worked well for us. As far as Australia is concerned, Australia needs to basically take a different approach. I think as a government, we are going through elections now, but I would like to see a government who has got an approach where we want to develop and improve our existing startup culture. We are a small nation, but we have got a very educated youth who we can actually we can push them towards innovation. And innovation is no doubt with the way technologies are taking control of our lives and moving forward, innovation is going to become even more stronger and going to become the strongest tool. I will purely talk about cybersecurity because that's and cyber education. That's where I have spent last 5 years. I believe Australia needs to do a lot in that space. In the US, each state is basically mandating it that cyber education is a must for school in grade specific. In Australia, I think we have left it to schools to decide what they want to do, although there is a work being done in various states. However, at a federal level, government is actually talking about the cybersecurity policy and strategy. I think to achieve that, unless and until we start embedding basic cyber education at each grade level, we will still struggle. Moving forward, if there is nothing easier than having a strategy that if you start educating your 10 years old today, in 10 years time you have a nation which is fully cyber resilient. We want kids to understand it at an early stage, so that you and I cannot change. Our habits are developed, but if we can help embed these basic cyber hygiene uh, um, um, practices in our kids, when they go into workforce in 10 years time, they will be much better prepared than us. I mean, 90% of attacks have always been linked to humans, and we are saying it's the weakest link, although some people, they don't want to talk, they don't like uh, uh, that we are the weakest link. We can turn that and become the strongest link, actually, if we can just prepare ourselves. Some of them are very basic habits, and if we can help that and embed it in each grade level, we will have a great nation. We are a great nation, but we can have we can be much better than that. There is always room for improvement.
Ikram, I think one thing you got to be careful saying there is talking about Tom not being able to change his habits. You said that we won't be able to change our habits, and don't tell Tom that. Okay, please let him know that he still has the ability to change his habits. That would be handy.
It's such an important looking forward. So just what I'd love to grab and just get you to dive in a little deeper. There's an interesting comparison. So, you know, in the US, you've got an entire state mandating it across all the schools. I did a little bit of elementary, junior high, and high school in the States when I was growing up. And being a half year out, it really threw me when I came back to Australia. So, what kind of, as an entrepreneur, and what were the kind of things you had to do when you were looking over there to kind of set the team up, find your beachhead, which states to start with, the kind of stuff that lessons learned that you could share with some of the entrepreneurs who are thinking about going on that journey listening today?
I think for Australian companies who are planning to move to US, read. When I landed in US, I basically state-wise, I had a pretty good idea how many students are there in each state. I knew all the way to grade level number of students, how many schools are there, how many districts are there, what are their buying habits, what are their buying cycles, all of that. Naturally, I was able to there is a lot of information available. It's just a matter of spending time and understanding the culture. Although it's an English-speaking country and it's Western, but America is America, and within America you have 50 different countries. Each state is very different. So then there are political affiliations. So as a technology company, as an educational company, you really need to stay away from all of that, and you just need to show the real problem you are trying to solve. Because any startup in Australia who wants to have a real startup existence, they need to think about USA from day one. That's a fact. And when you have that approach, you are probably going to flip at some stage and become an American entity. Especially if you're working in cyber, they don't want you to be another country's company to be selling your products, because you're going to sign contracts. You are going to every cyber company has got very stringent contracts you will be signing, and these contracts are very strict. Obviously, the data privacy is number one priority, where data is stored, all that. So you have to become some sort of an American entity. We became an American entity back in 2022. And so we are, in essence, as an American entity, but still our R&D and everything is in Australia. And we are an Australian company. Having said that, be ready to face all these challenges, but they are like only a challenge if you really are not prepared. Once you're fully prepared and understood, these things are very basic. As far as tariffs are concerned, it doesn't impact us in real essence.
So it's kind of like, I guess, a little bit of light shining through the clouds for cybersecurity SaaS platform owners in Australia as they're going over there. Just to kind of shift us back to one of my favourite sayings, culture eats strategy for breakfast. First of all, there were a couple of things when my oldest boy is now 21, as he was starting to dive into social media, that really sent my head spinning. One of them was the way on Snapchat it would show where all their friends were at any particular time. And my brain went back to, and I know you guys would have the same experience, the phone on the wall when you're young, and a one-to-one conversation. Whereas now, in a psychological sense, if your friend group is out and not included you can actually see that, which is quite challenging. So I also had to learn that I had to shift my frame of reference into, the world my children were experiencing and think about it from that perspective. So that's kind of leading me into this culture eats strategy kind of next part of it, which, again, we're in an election campaign at the moment, and cybersecurity in general hasn't surfaced yet. But the well-being of our children, when mental health was raised again yesterday or the day before in the election campaign, it was about psychological support and one-to-one experiences. It wasn't about creating a culture of leadership by our politicians to actually show a better way. And as you said, seeing your peers doing this. So what would you like to see in Australia? What are the conversations that we're not having that really should be happening, and especially in an election cycle, to kind of start shifting this forward?
Yeah. I think as far as Australia is concerned, when you compare that to the rest of the world, Australia is slightly ahead. We are very lucky to have e-safety commissioner. She's been phenomenal in terms of her approach, in terms of education, in terms of awareness. Things like the latest challenges we are having in form of cyberbullying, sextortion, deepfake, gaming addiction, image-based abuse, incel culture, fake news, grooming, all these things are very real. And most of them are purely a product of social media. And once we have realized that, in Australia, we are at least able to come up with this new regulation that 16 should be the age. Again, everybody has their own opinion on what is the ideal age. But from our side, we are just saying it's a government issue, set the age. But the most important thing is let's get them educated on the challenges they're going to face. What we have done, all these problems which I have spoken, for high schoolers, we have developed case-based studies and analysis and reflection points, which are implemented in classes from 9 to 12. And it's like talking about a situation, and then teacher has thrown all the kids into that a simulation and said, how would you react into that? And then everybody goes onto the platform and they give their opinion. Sometimes you play as bully, you play as a victim of bully. Sometimes you play as a bystander. Sometimes you play as an upstander. We really need to basically implement these case studies in a way where these kids can learn. And once they are implemented in school, the results are very tangible. So far, all the results and experiments we have done in the US has been definitely very, very helpful for us to move forward. And I would like to basically implement similar things in Australian schools as well. Although there are a lot of options happening in Australian schools, but again, still I would like to see if the programs are implemented in great specific way.
And I was just thinking off the back of that, Jason, some of the conversations that you've had when you're up hosting some of these big cyber events about kind of getting this as part of just everyday kind of language and lexicon in Australia. So what do you think we need to be doing to shift the dial here as well?
Yeah, I think, as I've always said, it needs to start at school, because the problem is, and as Ikram said earlier, is that 10-year window, it needs to start as early as possible. So if we can get the kids into good habits early, as I've always said, putting seatbelts on in cars, brushing their teeth, all these different habits that we as parents have taught our children, and make sure that they learn, this is as critical and as key as all those things, and probably more so in how they interact with the internet and other people. It's no longer stranger danger just walking out on the street as it used to be. It's stranger danger online, from that sort of point of view as well. So how can you be as safe and secure as possible, and just teaching those absolute basics in there. We've spoken about on here with, even cartoons like Bluey and stuff like that, and putting lessons through what are cultural things that kids are paying attention to that they will actually get the messaging through, rather than, and Ikram's done a fantastic job of doing the layout of the program as he does it. And to support that, we need to do other things as well. It just can't be a single point coming in. It needs to be multiple ways that this message is coming through the children, so that they get it, and it just does become that behavioural change that they don't even think about, like, putting the seatbelt on in the car. It's just an automatic habit, and it just these simple behaviours need to become automatic. And the sooner you can actually get that into their systems, the better. So why wait until kindergarten or into primary school? These things really should be happening, because they're getting device in their hands before they can even speak. So this is how we have to look at it as a community. And with these nuclear families and the way everything's spread around, we're not getting the share around, and everyone's not learning. It's not just the kids. We've got to unlearn the bad habits for older people, whether it's their parents or grandparents as well. It's a whole of nation and a whole of citizen issue. But really, the best place we can start is with the kids, and the kids can actually teach the parents and the grandparents. Once they've got it down pat, the parents will be giving the devices to them. I see it already happening. Sort of happens to a degree with all of us probably on this call. That if you have older parents and they may struggle technologically, they actually go to you and say, "Can you help me with this?" or whatever the case may be. So it's it's just changing that. And if we bring this next generation through as digital natives, it'll change the whole system and the whole structure, and make everyone a lot safer online.
Yeah. The way I look at it, I did 2 years ago a study. I wrote a paper and I submitted to Department of Home Affairs while they were doing the cyber policy strategy thing. And I was basically of the opinion that historically we have seen nations' strength by looking at their results from literacy and numeracy. How good is their literacy and numeracy in schools? And traditionally that has been taught in books and papers and pens and pencils. Now all that literacy and numeracy is being delivered on devices. So there got to be a third pillar. There is literacy and numeracy, 2 pillars. What's the third pillar? Third pillar is actually cybersecurity. And that's what, as long as we are able to implement that as a behavior in each grade, learning and how they can move forward, I think we can create a great nation as a nation for the future. It has to happen. We cannot wait. The challenges are on daily basis coming in the form of phishing, in the form of new scams. AI is creating a whole new ball game of challenges. We need to make sure our kids are able to learn that. We are already moving into AI. We are educating already high schoolers in the US how they need to basically be looking into AI, what kind of commands and prompts they can use, and how they need to basically observe certain guardrails. Obviously, these are the challenges we have now. We are moving into an election in next 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and the aim is that as long as we have a government who is able to understand that, able to move forward and basically take a very proactive approach. Gone are the days when technology was moving forward and all the politicians were laying back, waiting for things to happen, and we were faced with all these challenges. Now the technology is moving forward in a way where this new technology has got much more intelligence than us, or at least it's going to have it at some stage in the future. We need to be prepared. We don't want to become subservient, although a lot of people are saying we are already subservient to technology. Technology was originally there to help us do our things better, not control us. So we really need to take a very proactive approach.
And again, be careful, Ikram, that you said that AI is smarter than Tom. Again, you just got to be very careful about these blanket statements. That I think actually Tom did call it early. I think the first release of ChatGPT in November a couple of years ago was actually smarter than Tom.
I think I used to be holding my own until deep research popped up, and then I knew it was all over.
Yeah.
So
it was all over before that.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating journey, because what it does, it allows you to capture expertise and apply that to the problem you've got. But I've also seen, the massive misuse. I think one of the things around human behavior is, and we see this, from kids right to adults, is doom scrolling, and this constant flicking for a dopamine hit. What is kind of one tip, one call to action you could give for, the parents out there, and one for, the high school children? What they should be, what level of understanding, what kind of conversations they would have And I really loved the simulation part you were talking about, getting people to step into other people's shoes and being able to empathise,
Yes.
have an experience of what it's like on the other side. So what are those key tips that you'd like to share?
I think for parents, the number one thing is talk to your kids, spend time, understand them, don't force on them. My kids will probably be laughing at me now, but
They will be. I think my kids would be laughing just in the fact that if I communicate with them when they're in the house, it's usually via a phone anyway. So even if they're in their room, it's usually via a phone. So even if they're in
please
close
talk to your
proximity,
kids.
yeah, we'll say talk or message as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a message.
As far as students are concerned, learn. Learning is by far the best thing you can to understand things. Learn. Learning should never stop. And for high schoolers, I think my advice would be talk to your parents, talk to your friends, talk to people. Don't just stay in the room, stay on the device. Go out. There is a physical life out there. You should at least be able to go and spend some time out. Go to gym. Go to the park. Go to shopping center. Do something, a physical activity. As far as respect and consent is concerned, which is a very fundamental part of growing up, have empathy for others. If you're gonna bully somebody, try to see how would you feel if you are being bullied. If you're gonna make fun of somebody's appearance, if you're gonna make fun of somebody's weight or height or their appearances, just be humble, just be empathetic to the point where you can understand how would you be feeling that. I think schools probably are looking at that, and all the lessons I have learned dealing with schools is schools are very much concerned. Teachers are overburdened with time, and they're overburdened with content, they're overburdened with what they need to teach, and then all these other problems. Half the time I'm talking to when I'm talking to teachers, they're talking to me that 20% of their time is just going into solving these social media issues and challenges. So again, in the US, some states have started to ban phones in the school. Like you can't have phone while you're in school. Each state and each country has got their own policies, but it will be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, and what about you, Jason? Having successfully brought up a couple of and amazing children to young adults, what's one lesson that you kind of can pass on, about that creating a good digital experience for them?
Yeah, the jury's still out on whether it's been successful or not, so we'll
I'm going
put
to
that to
call it.
one side. Yeah, we'll put that to one side. But yeah, I mean, we sort of touched on some of that stuff. Is that we did have devices out of the room, so that was all computers, everything basically in the office. From sort of 10 o'clock until 7 a.m. Yeah, especially during school time. Once they got older and got into university and stuff, that was up to them. They got their life in their own hands at that point. But under 18, we did basically have that as a strict rule. But yeah, always talking about, I suppose, working in cybersecurity meant that I probably did apply a lot of things that normal parents don't, that should probably, with regard to, password managers and MFA and all those sorts of things, put in there, as Tom mentioned earlier, with Snapchat taking off location services and stuff like that, really having that chat to them about, especially the older one, a lot of dick pics and stuff like that were coming through. And she was very sharing with us. We were sort of lucky in that way, probably oversharer, but good as a parent that you've got a kid like that, that actually goes, hey, I got this, or, someone's offered me drugs at a party or something like that, we'll actually talk through it. So we had that conversation and it was very open from that point. As I said, probably for some people it might have seemed extremely open, but I'd rather have those sort of conversations, and then it actually brings in your younger child as well, So that was my approach. Doesn't mean that's the right approach for everyone, but that's exactly how I did it. I wanted to know that, if you're going to go and do something, if you're going to try something or whatever, let's talk about it first before you go, and I can sort of talk you through it, because I've got a friend called Tom who's done all this sort of stuff before, and if I can sort of share some of the stories of my friend Tom, who just went off the rails a bit, then that's quite useful. So I'm lucky that I've actually had my friend Tom as someone I could use as an example, because I was a perfect child, so obviously growing up and never got into any trouble, so I couldn't use any of my own experience, Ikram, and I always had to use my friend Tom's stories. So you get it, but that's pretty much how we sort of did it and took it from here, and made a bit of humor around as well. You got to make it a bit of fun, because as you said, cyber can be a scary topic, and you need to basically sort of try and take the air out of that sometimes and make it more approachable. So my younger one's still very interested in sort of working in the field a bit now, but that wasn't from pushing in that direction. It was just actually from just opening up the opportunity and having those conversations and talking about things. So that's, I think, the best way you can do it. In my opinion, is just really approach it from that way. And then they were sharing it on with friends because they were learning it. Then they were saying, and actually my younger daughter did an assignment on that for one of her year 12 assignments or something. It was like, let's do on a subject. And she did it on cybersecurity for kids in school. So she did a PowerPoint and all that sort of stuff and actually taught that at school. So, having them teach it back to you is actually quite useful as well, because you can learn something passively, but obviously if you get to unlearn that or teach that to someone else, that helps that retention, So
we have one of the schools here, they had implemented our program in grade 5, 6, and 7, and these kids were learning on Tuesday the concept, and there's a nursing home across the road, so they were going there on Wednesday to teach all the oldies.
That's great.
Cool.
Online. Yeah. So things like that.
So remember that show? There was a show on ABC. I think it was Old People's Homes, where they had the kids going in there. And it was really good for both, but great for the young kids to have that sort of grandparent type role model, but also you saw some of these older people change, by having these interactions with the young kids, and they were doing, races with the Megan Spoon races or different things, which was really uplifting the older people, but also great for the kids to learn stuff as well, and it was really a great show. But that's a great point, and I think that these are sorts of things we should talk about is in the community. How can we get them learning something and then on passing that to someone else, and that bridges that gap between the older community and younger. So Ikram, that's the sort of stuff I think we need to hear more of and sort of put out in there.
One of the things was in this parent dashboard which we launched is kids are able to take an activity home, so they get the chance to pick. I want to do this activity with my grandpa or grandma, or I want to do it with my brother or my sister, or I got my neighbor. I'm going to do it with my friends. So these activities are like they talk about like how to secure your new printer, how to secure your camera, to secure
your Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi, all that thing.
Yep.
So they are able to basically do that, and then parents are able to upload that activity into the system just to show that they have done it. It's just kind of teaching them the basics, but again, at the end of the day, it's a great way of putting the family together and doing something.
You could sell these kids on Airtasker as well. It could be cheap labor. That's another thing we should be looking at. So.
I keep telling my youngest, video editing, you can make a bit of money out of doing that. Look, I think the one thing that I kind of lucked onto with both of my boys early on was this concept of not letting themselves shut themselves away. So the younger one, also the older one now, was very much into Xboxing. So that was in the lounge room and the door was always open. And so he always had to be conscious of moderating his behavior for a family environment. And it also allowed us to listen to when things went off the rail. And our youngest one is very much just a gamer on his laptop. But again, the same thing, his bedroom, the door has to be open when he's online. And then it allows you to kind of, be aware when things are going off the rail because you can hear it, but also they've always got in the back of their mind that, okay, there are adults listening to this conversation. So it allows them to moderate and build a bit of a filter into how they behave, because you can't control who's on the other end of it.
It is by far one of the major challenges most parents have. Kids are spending enormous time playing on these gaming platforms. Most of these gaming platforms are a nightmare in essence. If you really see, they'll play the game, but you have no idea if your 10-year-old is actually playing against a 10-year-old or if it's a 40 years old. There are multiple stories of that nature where kids been playing and they've been groomed. So we developed a huge, massive program of educating them on gaming disorder, and for them to understand the 7 signs of if somebody is asking you these questions, you need to, these are the red flags, you need to be careful. Similarly, we developed a program where parents, once they are actually watching the video with the child, and it's like the very first sign is if your son is addicted to the game, the first sign would be that you are calling them for dinner and they're saying 5 more minutes, mom, or 5 more minutes, dad. That's a classic sign that they are being addicted. All these things are there, all these challenges are there, but the number one thing is start talking to your kids.
Yeah, look, I love that, and I think we'll wrap up on there, Ikram. And I'd just like to do a big call out. So if you're out there listening, you're a parent, you've got kids, go and ask the school what are they using to kind of help teach kids. How are they doing that? You can recommend Hackersjack as a platform. Jump on the website, have a look, jump on and follow Ikram on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really important conversation today, and I hope that we can just change a few adults into thinking about this, encourage some more people to get on that platform, and, you know, God forbid the politicians actually kind of jump on board and start mandating tools like yours to be in schools and part of that education program. So thank you, Jason, as always, for joining me, and thanks, you, Ikram, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks
gentlemen.
Ikram.